I was the guest of honor at my former boss's family legacy gala. I gave the keynote speech. I even presented the Corporate Values Award to his eldest son. All the family had to do was stand there smiling, basking in the applause, and watch their entire world dissolve into static on the 60-foot screen behind me. Welcome to Boomerang Stories. I'm Alana. If you're new here, this is a space for the quiet ones, the watchers, the people who understand that the most satisfying justice is not a shout, but a whisper that echoes for years. It's for anyone who has ever been told to sit down and be grateful, only to stand up and rewrite the entire story. Before we dive into how to dismantle a dynasty from the inside, look at the screen. Right now, tell me where you're joining us from. Drop a comment. Just your city. I read them all. It's a reminder that these stories connect us, that the feeling of a betrayal so deep it rearranges your DNA is universal. We are everywhere. And if you believe that when a family declares war on you, the only appropriate response is a siege, hit subscribe, turn on that bell, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story of revenge. It's a masterclass in architectural collapse. You don't topple a monument with a hammer. You examine the stress fractures. You calculate the load-bearing lies, and you apply pressure to the exact point where it all wants to fall down on its own. Now, it began with a single misdirected email, but to understand the magnitude of that fall, you have to see the height of the tower I helped them build. My normal world was one of quiet, furious competence. For 12 years, I wasn't just an employee at Vance Sterling's real estate empire Sterling Holdings. I was his architect, his fixer, the human keystone. He was the charismatic face, the booming laugh, the handshake that closed deals. I was the one in the quiet office after midnight, the one who found the cracks in his grand visions and filled them with legal concrete before anyone saw the seepage. I navigated zoning wars that would have made a general weep. I smoothed over furious investors whose checks were a heartbeat from bouncing. And once I spent a 48-hour weekend in a dusty, fluorescent-lit City Records office in Cincinnati, surviving on vending machine coffee and determination, to unearth a single faded property ledger that proved he owned a disputed parcel of land. That parcel turned a $4 million profit. He called it a gut instinct. I called it forensic salvation. Vance was more than a boss. In the absence of my own father, who was better at making promises than keeping them, Vance became a mentor, a beacon. He'd clap me on the shoulder, a firm, warm weight, and call me his secret weapon, his ace in the hole. He'd look me in the eye at company parties, with his wife Eleanor glittering beside him, and say, "Family looks after family, Maya." He said my name like it was a precious stone, a rare and valuable find. I believed him. I drank that Kool-Aid until it replaced my own blood. I risked everything on that belief. My health, as deadlines became all-nighters, became migraines. My relationships, as dates were cancelled and friendships faded into polite texts. My own professional ethics, bending rules that felt wrong but were for the family. I took the fall for a critical permitting error his son, Julian, made, standing before the board and calmly stating it was my oversight, my lapse. The disappointment in Vance's eyes that day was my penance, and I bore it, thinking it proved my loyalty. I poured my soul into the Vanguard Tower project, the jewel in the sterling crown, the billion-dollar downtown masterpiece. I secured the final elusive investor by leveraging a contact from my MBA days, a favor I could only call in once. I gave it to them. I was the foundation beneath their gleaming tower of glass and ambition. Unseen. Essential. I thought that made me safe. I thought my value was my armor. I was so wrong. The betrayal didn't come from Vance, not directly. It came from the very concept of family he was always selling. It came from the inner sanctum I was never, ever meant to be a part of. It was a rainy Tuesday. Vance was on a lavish golfing trip in Scotland with Julian, a father-son bonding expedition paid for by a client's business development fund I'd creatively categorized. His personal assistant, Sarah, a kind woman perpetually flustered by the family's chaos, forwarded me an email. "Maya," she wrote, "Vance is OO. Can you handle this vendor contract for the gala? Looks standard." It wasn't a contract. It was an email chain. Julian to his mother, Eleanor. Eleanor to their family lawyer, Charles Whitlock, a thread that wasn't meant for me. The subject line was a cold, clinical slap. Maya contingency. My blood didn't run cold. It evaporated, leaving a hollow, howling void in my chest. The contingency was a meticulous, bullet-pointed plan for the period immediately following Vanguard Tower's successful completion and opening. It was a blueprint for my professional eradication. Phase 1. Fabricate performance issues, citing erratic behavior and declining attention to detail, the very burnout their demands had created. Phase 2. Invoke a technicality in the complex equity-sharing bonus structure I myself had drafted to protect the company, using its own logic to withhold the $1 million+ stake I'd been promised. Phase 3. Leverage my unstable personal situation, the isolation they'd engineered, to suggest a gracious mutual parting of ways for my own well-being. It was a surgical strike designed to leave me with nothing. No reputation, no money, no recourse. The lawyer's reply at the bottom was a single, elegant line. Understood. The structure is in place. We'll activate once she's served her purpose. I read it 7 times. The first 3, my brain simply refused to pass the words. The 4th, the hot rage came. A volcanic surge that turned my vision red at the edges, a white noise scream in my ears, a tremor in my hands so violent I had to clasp them together. I thought of the 3 prestigious job offers I'd turned down last year, offers that would have made me a partner elsewhere. I'd turned them down for them. I thought of my sister's wedding, where I'd been a ghost on the phone in the hallway, managing a sterling crisis that I now realized was likely manufactured by Julian. I had missed her walking down the aisle for them, but the hot rage, the kind that makes you scream and break things, didn't last. It cooled. It hardened. It underwent a metamorphosis under the extreme pressure of that moment, crystallizing into something new, a cold, sharp, and perfectly clear diamond of purpose. This wasn't a mistake, a moment of panic. This was architecture. They had blueprinted my ruin with the same calm precision I used to blueprint their skyscrapers. They saw me not as a person, but as a useful component, and once my utility was spent, I was slated for decommissioning. And that's when I understood the first fundamental rule of true workplace revenge. You don't waste your energy attacking the finished structure head-on. That's what they expect. That's what their lawyers, their PR firms, their wealth are braced for. No, you become a silent scholar of their own blueprint. You find the single critical load-bearing lie everything else depends on. And then, with infinite patience, you remove the keystone and step back. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't quit in a fiery blaze of accusations. I wouldn't fight the monstrous, greedy creature they were trying to create. I would do something far more effective. I would open its cage, and I would gently guide a bigger, hungrier, more legitimate predator right to its door. My silent decision was made in that exact minute, sitting at my desk, the rain streaking the window like tears on a face I would never show them again. I would become the most perfect, loyal, indispensable Maya that had ever existed. I would be more dedicated, more invaluable, more trusting than ever before. I would help them build their tower so high, so fast, so glittering with perceived success, that the only thing left for it to do was fall. And I would make sure I was holding the only copy of the demolition plans when gravity finally remembered its claim. The long game began the very next day. Vance returned, suntanned and boisterous, tossing a hideous tartan sweater onto my desk. "For my MVP, straight from the home of golf," he boomed. I smiled, I laughed. I let the warmth touch my lips, but nowhere near my eyes. He wouldn't know how to look for it anyway. He saw only the reflection he wanted. "Just doing my part for the family, Vance," I said, holding the ugly sweater to my chest like a cherished gift. He ate it up, his eyes crinkling with satisfied paternalism. I became a ghost in the machine of their ambition. My first target was Julian's fatal flaw, his staggering, unearned arrogance, polished to a high sheen by his mother and left unchallenged by his father. He fancied himself a disruptive visionary, a deal-maker who operated on instinct, above the mundane drudgery of details. So, I began to feed that instinct. I brought him brilliant, high-risk, high-reward opportunities, complex, layered deals with hidden volatile clauses I knew how to navigate, and he, in his laziness, never would. I'd present them with wide-eyed admiration. Julian, this is genius, but it's got some tricky moving parts in the financing structure. Let me handle the boring compliance stuff. You should be the one pitching this to the board. Only you have the vision to sell it. He'd swagger into the boardroom, take full credit, and sign wherever I pointed with a flourish. I made him feel like a king while quietly handing him shovels to dig his own moat. For Eleanor, the matriarch whose entire identity was a performance of gracious sacrifice, I enabled her most extravagant whims. The Vanguard Tower Completion Gala, a family legacy celebration, was her brainchild. I volunteered to be its shadow executive. Eleanor, I'd say, voice soft with feigned concern, you shouldn't be burdened with logistics and budgets. You are the vision. You are the story. Let me handle the tedious details so you can focus on curating the experience, the guest list, the narrative. She preened, convinced of my devotion. I approved every insane, opulent expense without a murmur. The 10-foot ice sculpture of the company logo, the orchids flown in from Thailand that cost more than my monthly rent, the extra private security detail for her personal jewelry collection. I let the gala budget bloat to 3 times its original size, a ticking time bomb of excess, with every overrun approved by her elegant signature, and all the while in the encrypted digital vault I maintained, I collected, not just the Maya contingency email, everything. Julian's signed approval on the deliberately flawed Cincinnati deal, with my attached warning email he'd marked read and ignored. Audio recordings captured legally in our one-party consent state of him laughing at the club, saying, due diligence is for people without instincts. My instinct is worth more than their spreadsheets. The bloated gala budget sheets, each line item a monument to vanity, all bearing Eleanor's florid, self-important signature. Financial projections I'd been asked to tweak, I kept both versions. The rosy, investor-ready fantasy and the true debt-riddled reality, showing the illegal commingling of client escrow funds to artificially prop up their liquidity. I wasn't just gathering dirt, I was assembling a fossil record of their corruption. This wasn't just about corporate betrayal anymore, it was about professional karma. I was methodically, patiently writing the recipe for their own destruction, and they, in their arrogance and greed, were handing me every single ingredient, measured out with their own hands. The payoff arrived on a perfect, crystalline autumn night. The gala was a cathedral to their ego. The ballroom shimmered. 60-foot screens showed beautifully edited loops of sterling family history. Vance's father with a shovel, Vance cutting a ribbon, Julian looking thoughtfully at blueprints. They held court at the centre table, radiant, a portrait of dynastic success. Vance's pride was palpable. Eleanor glittered, holding court. Julian was insufferably smug. I was where I was supposed to be, invisible, backstage in the black-walled chaos behind the scenes, wearing a comms headset, overseeing the AV run of show. I'd befriended the lead AV tech, a brilliant, underpaid guy named Leo, whose contract Julian had personally tried to cancel to save a few $1,000s. Leo remembered, and Leo, like me, believed in the quiet balance of things. Julian's big moment arrived. He was to accept the Corporate Values Award, a piece of crystal invented solely for this evening. As he adjusted his tuxedo jacket and swaggered onto the stage, the family beaming up at him like he'd just discovered fire, I caught Leo's eye across the dim backstage. He was pale but resolute. I gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. And now, Julian said into the microphone, his voice oozing false humility, a little visual tribute to the values that built us. The hard work, the integrity, the family trust, the inspiring, soaring music video cut. For 1 second there was blissful, empty black screen silence. Then my ghost in the machine woke up. First, the Maya contingency email, the subject line, the bullet points, the lawyer's cold reply, projected in 10-foot-tall, horrifying clarity. A collective, sharp intake of breath sucked the air from the room. Julian's smile froze, then melted into confusion. He glanced off stage, panicked. Eleanor's hand flew to her throat, her eyes wide with horrified recognition. Then, the cascade began. No music, just the quiet click of a slide changer. Julian's signed approval on the flawed deal, my warning email beside it, highlighted. A clip of his voice, clear as a bell, boasting about ignoring due diligence. The gala budget sheets, line items for exotic ice delivery, and security for diamond necklace circling like vultures. And then, the crown jewel, a side-by-side financial projection. On the left, the beautiful upward trending graph Julian had shown the investors last month. On the right, the true graph, a cliff dive into red with arrows pointing to the illegally shifted funds, their account numbers only partially redacted. It was an autopsy report, presented on the wall of their own celebration. The screen became a silent, scrolling indictment. The room was tomb quiet, save for the low, accusatory hum of the projector. I watched from the wings. I saw Vance's face. It was the most profound thing I've ever witnessed. It didn't flash with anger at first. It collapsed. It crumbled, layer by layer. Confusion, denial, dawning comprehension, and finally, a gutted, devastating horror as he looked from the screen to his son's guilty panic, to his wife's ashen face, and understood. He understood the empire he'd built was a fresco painted on rotted wood, and the woman he'd trusted as his foundation had just shown him the termites. I didn't run. I walked. I took off my headset, the plastic still warm from my skin, and placed it gently on the tech table. I picked up my simple black clutch from a chair, and I exited through the heavy side door, stepping from the pressurized, perfumed atmosphere of the ballroom into the cool, clean, anonymous night air. Behind me, the silence shattered into erupting chaos. Shouted questions, a rising tide of furious voices, and one single piercing scream that could only have been Eleanor. I didn't look back. I had been the foundation, and I had just, with calm precision, triggered the controlled demolition. My work was done. The aftermath wasn't an event, it was a season. A study in the slow, inevitable physics of karmic collapse. The revenge fallout was swift, public, and total. The SEC launched a formal investigation the following Tuesday, based on an anonymous, meticulously organized, and hyperlinked digital packet delivered to them. Major investors, their faces red with fury and embarrassment, filed simultaneous lawsuits for fraud and material misrepresentation. The press had a field day. The legacy gala gone wrong was the business scandal of the year. Vance, in a desperate last-ditch effort to save the hollow shell of Sterling Holdings from total dissolution, did what he had to do. He threw Julian and Eleanor under the bus in a devastating public statement. Their marriage, a partnership of ambition and appearance, shattered under the weight of mutual blame. Julian was formally charged with multiple counts of securities fraud. The gala, their masterpiece, became a permanent legend in industry circles. A shorthand for catastrophic self-immolation. The tower didn't just fall, it was vaporized, erased from the financial skyline as if it had never been. Vance called me once about a month later. He left a voicemail, his voice old and thin, stripped of all its boom. "Maya, it's Vance. I just need to understand. Why? We were family." I listened to it once, my heart a still, cold stone in my chest. Then I deleted it. Family doesn't blueprint your ruin in a document titled Contingency. I had merely taken their blueprint, studied it, and returned it to its rightful owners, annotated with the consequences they'd failed to calculate. As for me, I took a month off. I went to the coast. I slept. I read books that had nothing to do with real estate law. Then I came back. I launched my own boutique consulting firm. My first clients were the very investors who'd escaped the sterling crash. They wanted the person who'd seen the truth to help them find it elsewhere. My reputation? Ironclad. Not as a whistleblower, but as a forensic strategist. I was the one who had the patience to see the whole board, the precision to make the one move that mattered, and the strength to walk away without a word. I was stronger. I was free. And for the first time, I owned every single piece of my life. My time, my loyalty. The boomerang had returned. I had thrown it not with malice, but with the precise calibrated force of their own betrayal. And it had come back with the exact velocity and trajectory to shatter the very hand that first sent it flying. So I'll ask you, what would you have done when you've given everything, your sweat, your loyalty, your best years, and the people you trusted as family try to break you and discard the pieces? Do you walk away and let them win, or do you stay and build a better, quieter, more perfect trap? Let me know in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from and what you think. Does this kind of patient justice satisfy you? And if this story of quiet calculation and perfect consequence resonated with you, hit subscribe. Your subscription is your vote for more stories about the invisible architects, the ones who understand that the most powerful force in the world isn't noise. It's the silent, inevitable pull of gravity on a poorly built thing. This has been Boomerang Stories. I'm Alana. Remember, they'll always build the tower. You just have to know where to place the charge. Until next time.